Welcome to the England Flaneurs. Today we're in Leman Street in the heart of London's East End. The street has connections with the BBC TV series Ripper Street, but more about that later. Formerly known as Leman Street, today it's in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. The street was built and developed in the 17th century as part of the development of Goodman's Field. It's named after John Leman, who was responsible for the development, and also includes Ayliffe Street, Mansell Street and Prescott Street. In the introduction to the video we saw the old signage when Leman Street was in the old borough of Stepney, but now, as I said, it's part of the borough of Tower Hamlets. The map I've just shown you will show where we are. We're in London's true East End and about 5-10 minutes away from my office in Fenchurch Avenue. The Black Horse pub has been on this site for about 300 years, and from 1730 was owned by Robert Bix, who was part of a very long-standing and famous Whitechapel family. As with several pubs in this area, it was a former coaching inn. Very soon we're going to take a turn on the left-hand side into Alley Street to see the famous St George's German Lutheran Church. St George's has been here since the 18th century and is the oldest surviving German church in Britain, and it's really provided a haven for thousands of German Protestants seeking economic opportunity and religious asylum and freedom in London's East End. This is our deja vu moment, our recurring theme. When we did the Spitalfields vlog about 2 months ago, we talked about French and Dutch Huguenots coming into Spitalfields to escape religious persecution. Sugar refining is interwoven with the history here, the history of St George's, and it serves as a major economic driver for the German immigrant community. Diedrich Beckmann in the 18th century was a wealthy sugar refiner and became a key founding leader of the church, and donated substantial funds towards its construction. The church here is built on an area of land known as Goodman's Fields, and this extends all the way to Mansell Street. It was named after the Goodman family who held much of the land here in the 16th century. The Leman family came into prominence 100 or so years later, and it's that family who the street is named after. The Leman family also helped develop adjoining streets such as Mansell and Alley Street. The building in front of us is the former St George's German and English schools. Now we can see the Oliver Conquest. Now this pub dates from the mid-19th century and was originally called the Garrick, as it was attached to the first Garrick Theatre, which was situated behind the pub here. Benjamin Oliver Conquest was the theatre manager there in the early parts of the 19th century. Now, if you like gin, this is the place to come. It's got over 100 different types of gin to choose from. So, if that's your poison, then please come here. It's well worth a visit. On the left-hand side, Leman Street Police Station. And this was built on the site of the Royal Albert Theatre and opened in 1891. It's associated with the Whitechapel murders and the Cable Street riots. We'll also make mention of it when we talk more about the BBC TV series Ripper Street that I mentioned in the intro to the vlog. On the left hand side shortly we'll see the famous 99 Leman Street, and this is known as Sugar House. Now, we talked about sugar refining earlier when we talked about St George's Lutheran Church and rich German sugar refiners coming into the area. Now, we're very close to the docks, and there's so many of the houses and the streets in this area have a connection with the docks and the commodities that were imported and exported through the docks. We'll see it at the end of the video when we feature on the new developments at Tobacco Dock. We're also very close to Silvertown and the Tate and Lyle factory there, and it's just another example of how historied and storied this area is around the Port of London and the docks here. Everywhere you walk, you just see these constant reminders of the goods and the commodities traded around here for the past few centuries. There's just so many clues to London's past trading glories, if you like. Though, as we saw a few weeks ago when we did the Flaneur-Exploring video, we talked about the East India Company. Much of this wealth and prosperity came from exploitation of local people and slavery. And as much as I love walking these streets and discovering London's history, it's also proper that we talk about the exploitation and where that wealth came from. Now, please forgive me, I've taken another detour, but it's well worthwhile into Hopper Street. Now, I just love these converted pump houses. This is a hydraulic pumping station built by the London Tilbury and Southend Railway Company. We talked about this railway a few weeks ago when we did the Fenchurch Street vlog. The pump house was constructed in the latter parts of the 19th century under the supervision of Arthur Lewis Stride, the railway company's general manager and engineer, and it's suggested that he probably worked with Augusta Manning, the East and West India Dock Company engineer, to power the hoists, capstans and cranes at the Commercial Road goods depot. The main part of the building at one stage housed 4 Lancashire boilers with an engine room above for 250 horsepower pumping engines, and was built on the footprint of a German Lutheran chapel. The pump house was listed in 1973 and passed into the ownership of the Greater London Council. The building was converted to office use in the early parts of this century and then was resold to be residential. I believe the first tenants were city workers. In 2009, the pump house was occupied by Stockwell Architects. On the left hand side we can see the Brown Bear. Now this pub has been here for over 200 years now and was featured in the TV drama Ripper Street, which we've mentioned already and will mention again. And outside you can see the bridge where the train crash happened in the second series. Before us we can see 2 railway lines. One is of the Docklands Light Railway, constructed just before the end of the last century, and the other one is of the Fenchurch Street to Southend line. Now, there used to be a stop here at Leman Street. Now, Leman Street as a station was opened by the Great Eastern Railway on the 1st of June 1877. The station was closed permanently on the 7th of July 1941 by the London and North Eastern Railway, along with neighbouring Shadwell and St George's East Station. Very shortly we'll be leaving Leman Street and walking onto Dock Street, but on the right hand side you will see Royal Mint Street, which hints at activities that may have taken place here in the past. Whilst we walk in the direction of Tobacco Dock down Dock Street, I'll make mention of Charles Booth, who worked a lot in this area as a social reformer and is famous for his poverty maps of London. His first works into the poverty of London, the poverty of the East End, was really in this borough of Tower Hamlets. Charles Booth's work really started after the claims of a Mr Hyman, leader of the Social Democratic Federation, Britain's first socialist party, who stated that 25% of Londoners lived in abject poverty. Booth began with a pilot study in Tower Hamlets and then further down the line was assisted with a number of researchers to study the whole of London. Amongst his researchers was the famous writer Beatrice Potter, and the chapter on women's work was conducted by the budding economist Clara Collett. The study concluded that 35% of people in the East End of London lived in abject poverty. Charles Booth also popularised the idea of a poverty line, a concept conceived by the London School Board. Booth set this line at 10 to 20 shillings a week, which he considered to be the minimum amount necessary for a family of 4 or 5 people to subsist. And many of those studies around the poverty line exist today, though people do have very different opinions as what might constitute poverty in 2022. Now finally I can get to talk about Ripper Street. I always make this mistake. When I come down these streets I always think there won't be enough to talk about, and then I end up missing a lot of very important points by trying to squeeze everything in. Ripper Street was a BBC drama set in and around Whitechapel in the East End of London, starring Matthew McFadden, Jerome Flynn, Adam Rothenberg, Anna Buring. The series begins in 1889, 6 months after the infamous Jack the Ripper murders, so there's that tension in and around the area of there being a high crime, violent area, and the aftermath of the Ripper murders are still very much in the psyche of this part of London. Detective Inspector Edmund Reed works for the H Division, which is responsible for policing this area, a very violent and disruptive community. London's East End is a real melting pot of lots of different people from different backgrounds, and there are some simmering tensions between these different communities. It's an area of poverty undergoing rapid change as well. Now H Division and the police are stationed at Leman Street on the site of the present police station there. The men of H Division had hunted the Ripper and failed to find him, so when more women are murdered on the streets of Whitechapel, the police begin to wonder if the killer has returned. This failure to find the Ripper really traumatises Edmund Reed. The series also features the character of Frederick Abberline, who is best known as being the prominent police figure in the investigation of Jack the Ripper, and it's Abberline who tries to console Edmund Reed in his futile struggle to find the Ripper. It's Abberline who commiserates, as I said, with Reed, who really understands the frustration and difficulties of dealing with the case. The series captures many aspects of London's social life, or East End social life of the time: the London matchstick strike of 1888, the electrical war of the currents, and the Leman Street scandal. The seedy, the grimy and the violent aspects of East End life are certainly not ignored in the series. Also we see during the series that Edmund Reed and Drake and Homer Jackson, an American who helps out Drake and Reed, often use slightly unscrupulous ways of framing criminals. Series 4 opens up with the Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, 1897, and Reed returning to Whitechapel to investigate the murder of a rabbi at the hand of Isaac Bloom. Ripper Street concludes after 5 series, and we've seen that Drake is being murdered and Reed and Jackson are hiding out in Whitechapel. Reed and Jackson are attempting to expose the true Whitechapel golem, Nathaniel Dove. And Reed's former nemesis, the unstable Jedediah Shine, becomes the head of H Division and vows to capture Reed. I thought the next shots in my own mind might sum up the new East End. To your left you can see Swedenborg Gardens and Stockholm House, which was local authority housing, and on the right hand side you can see the plush new development of Tobacco Dock, which I imagine will be high value, high end residential development with some high end eateries and restaurants to go with it. We're just now surveying this new panoramic view, this new vista for a while, this new East End of London, and we'll be turning back towards Leman Street. There's a nice alleyway here and a nice bit of signage. 139 Leman Street, where the present Round Bear pub is situated. Well, the last buildings we see on our trip down Leman Street today, we missed it initially, is the Eastend dispensary, which we'll see on the right hand side. The dispensary was founded in 1782 to provide free healthcare to poor local residents, and the dispensary was first housed on the north side of Great Alley Street. It was supported by an on-call midwife, older care for women in their homes, and a resident medical officer alongside visiting surgeons and physicians of standing, including Thomas Southwood Smith in the 1820s and 30s. The dispensary moved to this present site in 1859. That concludes our trip down Leman Street. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm now heading back towards the city and Flaneur-Exploring Street, so that's goodbye from the Ang and Flaneurs. I hope to see you soon.